The 2013 elections is shaping up to be an exciting one. We will give you a rundown of the events and issues that you need to know. Join us as we count down to the midterm polls. I'm Mai Rodriguez and this is Elections 2013. With me is our resident election analyst, former COMELEC Commissioner, Attorney Gregorio Larrazabal. Good evening.
Good evening, Mai.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to be back.
As the midterm polls draw near, parties have been more determined in passing policies perceived to be beneficial in advancing their members' bid in various positions of power. In tonight's episode, we'll talk about how will party politics play in the next elections and how will it affect the behavior of the electorate. But first, to help us understand how party politics evolved in the country, let's watch this special report.
Party politics is supposed to be based on platforms and principles as well as program of government, no? In which a group of people agree to support. So that's why they organize themselves into parties, no? So that's why that's the real meaning of party politics.
In the Philippines, party politics plays a huge part in policy making. In recent history, the proliferation of party politics was evident during the 9-year rule of former President Gloria Arroyo. Critics pointed out that numerous bills were enacted to cover up alleged corruption in her government and to advance the advocacies of the ruling Lakas Kampi CMD. Today, administration critics are hitting the Liberal Party for the passage of the Bangsamoro Framework Agreement, saying the move was meant to boost the chances of administration bets in vote-rich Mindanao. Professor Ronald Simbulan, a political analyst from UP Manila, explains how party politics evolved in the country.
It began during the American colonial period, no, where the United States, as part of its pacification campaign and to end the war of resistance against American occupation of the Philippines, decided to encourage the formation of political parties. When the United States introduced elections, no, here in the country, because during that time you had to be propertied, no? You had to have some property or land and also to be educated in order to participate in the elections, meaning in order to vote as well as in order to run for public office. So right there and then, those who could only participate in the political process, no, in the structures created by the Americans, were people from the elite. The ordinary Filipinos who did not have any property at all could not participate in the political process, no, either vote or to run for public office. So that is how the elitist nature of our party system began, and why up to now it is controlled by the few, no, in the Philippine political setting.
Simbulan says party politics also affects the passage of certain bills. With only barely 5 months before the midterm polls, Professor Simbulan emphasizes the importance of policy making in advancing the causes of various political groups.
In the case of the Philippines, since most of our mainstream political parties are not based really on principles, no, but are based on narrow interests of the political clans and dynasties. It affects the quality of the bills, no, because normally the bills and laws that they pass in Congress reflect the interests of the elite, no, the oligarchy in the Philippines, who comprise these political parties, no, in mainstream Philippine politics.
With controversial bills such as freedom of information, reproductive health, and sin tax, Professor Simbulan maintains that political parties will most likely take positions that will benefit their candidates. Joining us tonight is UNA Secretary General and Navotas Representative Toby Chanco. Also with us is Liberal Party Vice President for Internal Relations, Secretary Neric Acosta. He's also Presidential Advisor for Environmental Protection. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's first talk about block voting. It's known that each party considers the weight of block voting. Does this influence how the Liberal Party, Secretary Acosta, decides on what policies to push for?
Whether there's a block of the party, like Liberal Party in the House or in the Senate, voting as a block. And indeed, because of the variety of views and exactly experiences that each one brings into the House, the legislative experience, it doesn't necessarily always come out as a block of a party voting singularly on one issue. In a more advanced or a more so-called sophisticated or developed parliamentary system, that would be the case. That's why there's a party whip. So that mag-away na kayo ng mag-away, but that's before you go out for a vote. Paglabas mo ng vote, block na yan.
So Congressman Chanco, what about the UNA? You mentioned that there's no party stand on the RH bill, for example.
There's none. There's no party stand on the RH bill. And even in the past issues in Congress, even we weren't UNA yet, kasi definitely naman, even before UNA was formed, PMP was already there and PDP was already there. And since in the presidential elections, we were together with each other, so in Congress, kami rin yung magkasama. But in all those issues that we voted upon, walang party stand.
Is it because some say, Congressman, that a candidate will lose the Catholic vote if a candidate is pro-RH?
No. RH is the issue at hand now.
Yes.
No? But there were many past issues wherein we didn't vote as a bloc. We had different votes.
All right.
So it's not because
So that's
you will
basically
use the
why-
Catholic vote, but because we think it's best that we respect each other's stand on issues.
All right.
But Congressman, there's a question regarding how members of the House of Representatives vote as compared to how senators vote. In the House of Representatives, they vote basically as a bloc in
Yes.
accordance with the party stand. But how do you distinguish this from the Senate? Or what's the difference between how the senators vote as compared to congressmen?
Without offending any of my colleagues in Congress and the House itself, we will see the independence of the upper chamber. No? So that's what we want doon sa UNA. Even as PDP, even as PMP, we want the independence of our party.
How can the voters know what a candidate stands for instead of the personality or these mergers overshadowing the issue?
We cannot avoid personality-based politics because of our weak party system. We have a multi-party system. We have how many parties? Maybe 20, 30 parties. So it really depends. And if you will look at the history of Congress, until 2010, when GMA was president, she had majority of the congressmen. How many of those were re-elected? But suddenly, after the next Congress, as soon as President Pinoy was the president, he had the majority of congressmen also. So we don't really have a strong party system. Voters are more discerning now because there's more information in front of them. Hindi katulad dati, information will mostly reach them during the campaign period. But at this moment in time, you just open your blog, people comment about the
Yes.
services of a local government, people comment about the services of the national government, of different agencies. So all of these are factored in when they finally vote. So it's not anymore the campaign period, but the whole 3 years of governing is a campaign period in itself.
Right.
Yeah, so the media and social media actually playing a big role in the coming elections. Up next, we will talk about how party politics affect the hot issues like the FOI, the RH bill, and the sin tax bill. This is Elections 2013. We'll be right back. You're still watching Elections 2013. We're talking about party politics. So, Secretary Acosta, let's talk about the Freedom of Information Bill. There's a perception now by some that this has taken a backseat to the RH bill, when in fact this was a campaign promise by President Aquino as part of his Daang Matuwid. So where does the LP stand on this?
Well, the very principle of freedom of information stands as a liberal party, in a sense, liberal party thrust. No? I mean, who doesn't want freedom of information? That is elemental to a democracy. The concerns were really actually even in the internal debates of the party, or even engaging different sectors. It had to do more with certain provisions that had to do with whether it's national security or certain processes that may impinge also on the right of the state or the government to also withhold certain information in the name of government policy or security, etc. So dun lang naman. It was never fundamental na do we want a freedom of information or not. It's very clear that every citizen now, especially with the internet, with social media, with media in general, can and should have access to public records and documents, etc.
But Secretary, there's a question that lingers in the mind of some of the voters, in which President Aquino was elected in 2010. There were 3 years have passed, almost 3 years have passed since he got elected, and people are wondering why have the controversial bills only been passed or discussed the year before elections. Why not do it in 2011 or immediately when he was elected?
Much as you'd like to have a legislative calendar followed, and if you're the party in power, if you have majority in the House or the Senate, you would like to think that you can pace the flow of debates, deliberations, all the way to voting, bicameral, etc. But you very well know also, especially when you're a new government coming in, a new administration coming in, that nothing really adheres to a schedule. There are windows of opportunity to push for particular policies at a particular time and a set of circumstances. But they get overtaken by events, and there's so many things that are just unpredictable. So it's not as if it was deliberate that controversial measures would have to wait till, as you may say, go towards sort of the end of a 3-year legislative term. But it is really because we also take the opportunity when you can also push for certain measures.
With reference to that, in this Congress, like we asked earlier, a lot of members of House of Representatives gravitate towards the administration party. But for example, Congressman Chanco still maintain his stand being in the opposition.
No, I mean, I'm an independent.
Independent,
I'm not with the minority.
Independent, but
I'm
you did
not
not
with the
join
minority.
you did not join the administration party.
No, I was part of the majority.
You were.
Of the majority bloc in Congress, but I did not join the majority party of the LP.
Okay.
But the PMP and the PDP Laban was part of the majority bloc in Congress. Until now, they are. I'm the only member of the PMP who is not part of the majority bloc.
But as an independent, are there any benefits or disadvantages?
No, disadvantages because you cannot be a member of any committee.
You cannot?
Yeah, which means to say you cannot vote on any committee issues, but you can debate, you can listen, you can attend, but you have no vote in any committee.
All right, Congressman Chanco, Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile is with UNA. He's a staunch opponent of the RH bill. Will his influence affect the stand of your members on the RH bill?
With all due respect to Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, who is the most senior member of the UNA and who we respect a lot, he has never talked to me or to my colleagues in the House to support his stand on the RH. So that's how we do it in UNA. We're all independent. We talk about it. Then in the end, we let each member vote according to their conscience.
What sets UNA up aside from other political parties in terms of policies or platform of government? Like you mentioned, we are at a stage where we're gaining political maturity and we have to strengthen the political party system. Why was there a need to establish a new political coalition?
To formalize the partnership of PMP and PDP Laban. It's a natural coalition kasi since 2010, since 2001 when President Erap was removed from office, it was only PMP and PDP that were together through all these elections, 2001, 2004, 2007, and then 2010, they were running mates, di ba? Through all these elections, we had other partners. But in the end, we started na kaming dalawa lang, and we ended up in 2010 na kaming dalawa lang. So looking forward, I think we understand each other. That based on President Erap's slogan and his belief that dapat maitaas yung buhay ng masang Pilipino at kay VP Binay na dapat gumanda yung buhay. So that is the reason why we coalesced the UNA formally.
Okay, so both
Instead of having the practical problem of PMP fielding a candidate, PDP fielding a candidate, dapat sana una lang lahat. Kaya lang, alam mo, attorney, even if that was the agreement, later on, ang dami pa rin lumabas na aside from una CONAS, meron pa rin PMP, PDP. So it's a practical problem that you have to solve, but which we wanted to solve sana, but still it came up.
So what you're saying is basically both political parties share the same agenda and policy and platform government. That's why you
Yes.
just coalesced.
Yes.
Because you have the same goal. You're going to the same direction. So you just might as well formalize your coalition.
Yes, and it's a natural coalition. Talagang, syempre makikipag-coalition ka. Kumbaga, it's a marriage of two parties. You marry someone you're comfortable with, who you've been with through the past 10 years.
Secretary Acosta, Manny Villar and President Aquino were rivals in the 2010 elections, and now that the Liberal Party and Nacionalista has coalesced, how did you resolve
Well,
that?
at least it's a working alliance.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the new.
So the policies and platforms of the LP, how did you reconcile these with that of the Nacionalista parties?
Well, it's reconciled really more generally, perhaps more broadly, in the sense that because the president needs all the help he can get as a sitting incumbent president, at least for the next 3 years of his remaining 3 years of the remainder of the 6-year term, that you need to reach out. So that's really the spirit or the principle. It's not so much that you have to coalesce as a marriage, because you do have differences in even whether it's even economic policy or whether your understanding of what are priority social legislation, whether it's RH, etc., FOI, etc. But that you need as much support as you can to get your reform agenda through in the limited time that you have, because 6 years is really a short time for any president.
Secretary, there was a pending bill, the syntax bill.
Yes.
But there were basically several versions, and two of the versions, different as they may appear, were filed by two different liberal senators. How did the party react to this, having two senators in the same slate proposing different bills?
Well,
I'm sure you worked it out, but how did you iron out the differences?
I think in many respects there are instances like this, like the syntax measure, where it is not internally determined by the party or the party membership and the leaders as to how you should really sort it out. It's sorted out by the larger polity. It's by the body politic, as we call it. Kasi lumabas na sa media, iba't-iba na yung version, mga full-page ads. There was so much of a reaction, even on Facebook, etc., that in the end, it's sort of, it took a life of its own. And in many respects, the party responds to what is really out there and what is out on social media now, especially. And so it's not as if it is internally generated or driven, Attorney Goyo. So that's maybe I'm just trying to reframe it. It's not so much the party drives it, issue for issue. In some respects, yes, like RH, it still has a lot of, but in like the syntax, a lot of it was also external. No? The reactions were from everywhere, from different fronts.
And I think that was what Congressman Chanco mentioned earlier, that the voting pattern in the Senate is different as compared to the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
Very much different.
Yes.
All right, we would like to thank our guests tonight, Secretary Acosta and Congressman Chanco. Thank you for being with us here in the studio.
Thank you very much.
We hope we informed the voting public. Up next, as part of the Solar News Channel's election information campaign, we're airing a series on political dynasties. When we come back, we'll take a look at how the Villars started in politics. Stay with us. The Villars have perpetuated in power since 1992, with Senator Manny Villar starting his political career as congressman for the Lone District of Muntinlupa. His wife, Cynthia Villar, is gunning for a Senate seat. Is this the start of a political dynasty for the Villars? Let's take a look at how they started their career in public service through this special report by Camille Elemia.
Former Congresswoman Cynthia Villar came from the prominent Aguilar political family in Las Piñas. Holding power for more than 2 decades, her father eventually passed the post to his husband, Manny.
Actually, it's my father who started in politics. He was elected mayor in 1963 in Las Piñas. He was mayor of Las Piñas for 22 years. And then congressman. And when he retired in 1992, it's Manny who took over the congressional seat.
But before being elected as congressman of Las Piñas, Manny Villar was one of the most successful real estate developers in the country. In 1975, he started his gravel and sand business that eventually became Camellia Homes. His vast wealth, coupled with his wife's influence in politics, led to his eventual entry to Congress. Serving 3 terms in Congress, he ascended into speakership in 1998. Realizing the power his post yielded, he ran for Senate in 2001 and he won. After serving 3 years in the Senate, he decided to take the next step and ran for presidency in 2010. Being the standard bearer of the Nacionalista Party in the 2010 presidential elections, Senator Villar was the richest presidential candidate in the 2010 polls. His bid was boosted by a massive campaign that utilized political ads in creating awareness for the electorate. Villar's rags to riches story was key to his campaign. He presented himself as the candidate of the poor.
Alam mo yung sipag at saka, totoo yun naman talaga kasi nagtitinda ako ng hipon sa palengke noong araw. And squatter lang kami sa Tondo noong araw eh. Siyam kami magkakapatid noon. At talagang tabi-tabi kami matulog noon. Talagang naranasan ko yung hirap. And so, pero yun ang nagturo sa akin na talagang magsumikap ka, mag-strive ka. And magano ka lang, wag kang... But very important yung pagka nada-down ka, tayo ka ng tayo. Very important yun na huwag ka matatakot, madapa.
But controversies and issues hounded the Villar family during the 2010 elections, most prominent of which is the C5 and the Anghari scam. An issue which was allegedly in violation of Republic Act 6713 or the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. The C5 controversy stemmed from a complaint filed by then-Senator Jamby Madrigal, accusing Villar of unethical conduct when he reportedly used his position to make insertions into the national budget for an anomalous road project, which, according to Madrigal, was purportedly diverted by Villar to pass through several real estate holdings belonging to his family, an accusation Villar vehemently denies.
Sabi ko nga, pag nakikita ko, nalulungkot ako. Can you imagine, ang laking hirap ng ginawa ko for Las Piñas. Paranaque, Cavite. Parang natalo pa ako doon sa Cavite, sa Paranaque. Sa Las Piñas, okay naman. Kung hindi ko pinadaan yun, paano naman, di ba? Hindi nga ako binayaran ng gobyerno doon. Hindi totoo yun na nakialam ako sa alignment doon. Invento lang yung kaso na yun eh. It's a closed case. And wala namang... Kaya, in fact, tama naman nung hindi ako nag-participate doon, I was proven correct by the Supreme Court.
Sinasabi nila may mga conflict of interest sa aming business. It's very clear to us, sa aming pamilya, that if there's a conflict between business and our public service, the people will come first. We don't need any more material wealth. We're okay. We believe that hindi yun naman kailangan masyadong maraming pera to be happy.
If you ask me, I think of all politicians, we're the most transparent because whatever we own is a matter of public, it's a public document. Vistaland is a listed company. Anyone can access, everyone knows where our resources come from.
Taking a big hit from the controversy, Villar lost the elections to now President Benigno Noynoy Aquino III. But despite the loss, the Villars continuously enjoy tremendous power both in the local and national level. Manny Villar is still a senator, set to step down in 2013. His brothers-in-law Vergel Aguilar and Leopoldo Benedicto serve as mayor and councilor of Las Piñas respectively. His son Mark is serving as congressman and is running for re-election in the upcoming polls. At present, Cynthia Villar, who served as Congresswoman of Las Piñas until 2010, is running for a Senate seat in the 2013 midterm polls. But as early as now, Cynthia Villar is being criticized of early campaigning due to her TV and radio commercials.
What's wrong with this? Kung may nagawa naman sila at gusto nilang sabihin in public, unfair ba yun? Ako, I will like them to tell what they have done.
For his part, Senator Manny Villar decided not to run for any position in the upcoming polls. He said he wanted to focus on helping out his foundation. Villar also pointed out that he might not pursue any plans of running for the presidency in the future. As to comment on the issue of political dynasty, the Villars, like any other political family, have this to say.
Sa akin naman kasi, democracy kasi tayo, mahalaga yung tao ang maghahalal. Kasi meron naman mga kamag-anak lang na wala naman talagang katangian o wala naman nagagawa, hindi naman dapat iboto yun. Pero yun naman, pagka naman may sinabi naman at may talaga namang may kakayahan din at may kapasidad, bakit naman hindi? Kaya sa tingin ko, in the end, depende kung sino. Para hindi mo pwede lahatin yung mga dynasty, meron ding magaling, may hindi.
It's always their option. There is an election every 3 years and it's up to them. Like in Metro Manila, you cannot possibly control them if they don't like your administration.
For Elections 2013, Camille Elemia, Solar News.
That was just part of our ongoing series on political dynasties. Tune in again next week for another in-depth story behind the ruling families in the country. So let's go back to our topic on party politics. Goyo, you've been an election lawyer for 14 years, COMELEC commissioner for a year and a half. You've seen party politics at play. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, in Asia, the Philippines is unique because unlike other countries where they vote for political parties, in the Philippines, candidates are voted for because of the personalities of the candidates, not the policies they stand for. We are on the road to political maturity, but in order to achieve this, we need to do several things. One of which is we need to strengthen the political party system in the Philippines. Now, when voters vote, they vote not only because they like the candidate, but because of what the candidate stands for. What are his plans of government, the policies he intends to implement, and what are his agendas once he gets elected to office. Aside from this, we need to strengthen and promote voter education in the Philippines. We have to teach the young how to vote, the right way to vote, how to choose the candidates, because ultimately these are the people who will rule the Philippines.
So how do you propose the government go about this voters' education? This is not the sole responsibility of the COMELEC, am I right?
Correct. In fact, right now, there is a proposal for voter education to be included in the curriculum for grade school and high school students. This is a step in the right direction, but it's not the only thing that should be done. Media plays a very important role in promoting voter education, and every person, every stakeholder involved in the process should do his or her part to improve the political maturity in the Philippines.
So thank you, Goyo. Thank you for joining us again today and for helping us out. We would like to thank you all for joining us. Tune in again next week as we tackle issues that matter to you. I'm Mai Rodriguez, and this is Elections 2013.